Think big, start small, scale fast. If you think about the App Store, today it's 500 apps being added every day.
Is buying technology an addiction?
If you are leading with the technology, you're always going to feel like you're behind. AI is outstanding and it will continue to, like I said, exponentially improve, but it is only good at tasks. It is not good at an entire job and it is not good at an entire workflow.
How have you seen the conversations on cybersecurity evolve in the last 5-6 years at the senior executive and the board level?
Privacy, trust, transparency, security is a key part of any software and ecosystem discussion. So making sure that cyber is part of.
Before we get started, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode of our cutting-edge contemporary conversations. Thank you.
Welcome, Lindsey. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me in.
Thank you for having this geek conversation, and which I'm not. So I'm trying to get myself upskilled or have more understanding on everything AI.
Okay.
Which you are a champ on. But before we go there, can you tell me a bit more about your background and your story and your experience?
We'll do the short version, probably.
That's fine.
So, my background before starting AI Access, which is probably the reason we're here today to talk about AI in the market. I have a 20-year plus corporate career, large organisations, ASX 50 plus. Bulk of my career has been involved in leading and managing organisation transformation. Mm-hmm. So the early part of my career was predominantly around organisational design, human resources, industrial relations. So I spent time in that sort of space within organisations. Mm-hmm. I then did an MBA mid-career, as a lot of folks do, in terms of broadening that skill set, and then had opportunity to lead commercial functions. That was a broadening opportunity, led joint venture management, finance, commercial, corporate affairs, Indigenous relations with a large energy company. And then from there, took both of those, formative experiences and thought, again, the next juncture is around digital transformation. Uh-huh. So how do you link and integrate? And so this is the methodology that I work with around linking and integrating strategy, technology and people. And so then it was about building an accelerator within a large enterprise around how do they innovate and move faster to solve the most challenging problems. Mm-hmm. And so I've done that in energy, I've done that in financial services, and then it came to a point in my career where I thought, I want to give this a crack instead of working as an intrapreneur inside organisations solving big problems. How do you help organisations, as an entrepreneur and set up a lean startup and a consulting entity to help organisations with the latest and greatest technology opportunity and risk, which is AI. And that's how I came to set up AI Access.
Lovely. Before I go into other things, how is raising boys look like to you?
Well, it's fun, and so I have two boys, 10 and 12. The absolute best thing about working for yourself as opposed to being on the clock in a corporate enterprise for me is getting the opportunity to walk the kids to school. So I make sure I spend time with them. They're only young once, and so right now I'm still okay. I'm not so uncool that they don't want to spend time with me. It'll probably be we're 6 to 12 months from that point. But lots of sport, lots of discussions around school, helping them with homework. It's just an outstanding time in my life and theirs, and so I'm really reflective at this point of. I only have a certain amount of time with them at this age, so I'm just trying to make the most of it and really enjoying it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I thought I'll ask that question before we go into tech. The landscape on the not just the AI, but whole tech transformation, which has been happening on a technology side of it has been an ongoing theme in the last 4 or 5 years across corporates. Everybody is going through large technology transformation, whether it's more of infrastructure side of it or whether it is on building their own version of CRM and getting an off the shelf and then redoing the whole CRM.
Yeah.
And that creates a lot of one is work, but a lot of change and a lot of change happening from a point of view for or larger employees. So how do you see when technology transformation done at mass? What are the things one happens? What are the good and the bads?
Again, I'm sure we could fill a whole podcast with how do you manage enterprise change and do it well. I think if you step back, and you think about people have become obsessed with AI right now. So 2 things I would say is look back and learn lessons before you look forward. And depending on how far you go back, technology changes from punch cards through to, the Apple Mac 42 years ago. I know that because I'm about 42. To when you look at Tim Berners-Lee and turning on the internet with HTML in 1990, to the App Store in 2008. All of these things are fundamental shifts in technology. And if you think about the App Store, we had 500 apps a day, 500 apps when that turned on in 2008. Today, it's 500 apps being added every day. And so if you think that humans' capacity to handle change is exponential, it's about getting people comfortable with the technology, but grounding it in what they're familiar with, which is usually the organisation's strategy and objectives. And so what I really make sure when I work with organisations, and having led internally and now subsequently guiding organisations, is it has to be less about technology leading and pushing a product into an organisation and more about what is it that will enhance the service offering to their clients, to their customers. How do you engage and enable your workforce? People will fight against something that's forced on them. If I work with an employee group and they look at the technology and they say, this makes my job easier, and it is better than my current state, they pull it towards them. They don't resist it. And so it's about looking for those highest value opportunities within the organisation that make a difference to the organisation's strategy and objectives and their execution, but then that are bitten off in a way that is small enough that you can see value quickly and it engages and enables the workforce. So easy to say, harder to do, but if you can get good at it, organisational change doesn't need to be complex. It needs to be about how do you realise the value? And that's where we talk to organisations about adoption.
And one step back towards, one step before, when you think of doing a large enterprise change, is why we're doing it. And what are things within the organisation from a large enterprise point of view have to happen to coincide together to say, okay, yes, we need a large project to, or across departmental project to work around this problem. So how do you come to a conclusion that, this is the bottleneck now?
Yeah. Ultimately, at one stage I had a full head of hair. I pulled it out working in organisations trying to manage, that sort of question around how do you coalesce different departments and groups of functions and people to solve a problem. And ultimately it comes down to, in the first instance, and when, the slogan effectively is think big, start small, scale fast. Not everything needs to be treated like an enterprise resource planning behemoth system. And so if you can get clear on the size of the prize is material to the organisation, it brings the executive sponsorship to the front. And so you really need, the critical ingredient is you need an executive sponsorship and board alignment. If you don't have that up front, it's very difficult to push something from the middle of an organisation and expect a success outcome. So leadership at the front end is important. Size and materiality is important. And then putting the right talent in is critically important. And so basically breaking down those barriers at the front end and saying this is important enough for the organisation and putting the right talent, the high talent individuals in to that cross-functional team, critical ingredients to set it up. And then it's starting small. What's small enough to prove this up and start the journey?
You know, the old school, the theory of triple constraints, time, cost, and quality.
Yes.
But the tetrahedron is, if you see the fourth one, is the people, the talent, what you said.
Yes.
And if the tetrahedron, this people doesn't work, and the whole makes, it just falls flat.
Absolutely. And so if you look at, probably the difference in, so in a project constrained environment, you've got, usually they say pick two out of the time, cost, quality equation.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you need to balance. It's, so we talk about link and integrate. If one of those things is out, your project's going to be out. In our world, what we talk about is strategy, technology, people. If one of those is out, the value isn't going to be delivered. And so it's about balancing, start with the strategy, have that link to the latest technology. Don't lead with technology and try and force it. What are we trying to do? And then how do you adopt and bring your people along to deliver that value?
I like buying tech things. And you want to have, is buying technology as an addiction? Because, and I also buy camera gear as well, and that becomes very costly. So you need to have the most recent or the best of all those things. But because naturally, once you start going in that pathway of buying tech, things become costlier. And is that a natural habit to have the best all the time?
Short answer is, if you are leading with the technology, you're always going to feel like you're behind. And so what we generally, so in that, whether it's an organisational or a personal construct, if you're looking at, well, why do I need the tech at the front end? The why question becomes important.
Yeah.
Can I get 80% of, the camera gear that's a year old that will still deliver me an outstanding experience, versus needing to spend, and buy the latest, which may be unproven? It's about understanding why you're trying to look at it. But ultimately what we start with, if you're thinking about the aspiration and the purpose, then it becomes, how do you do it? And if you're buying, and if you think about transformation and technology, buying things off the shelf is expensive. Building custom means it matches your service, your process, your workflows, and it's yours. And so our mode of operation is generally to look at, each organisation has its own context. How do you custom build to make sure that they get their service offering and their product that offers them a competitive advantage, not something that's off the shelf that's the same as everyone else is using.
Across the sectors, the term cybersecurity and privacy is, has different meaning and a different relevance, and how far do you go to implement the best and the greatest? How have you seen the conversations on cybersecurity evolve in the last 5-6 years at the senior executive and the board level?
It's certainly taking, it's probably moved from a big data conversation to a cybersecurity conversation being front and centre to now being AI. The risk appetite and the cyber stature that organisations need to be thinking about was probably something most organisations were thinking about and came to bear in the last few years. But to me, it's an ongoing conversation, and it's ongoing in the sense that AI, you talked about privacy, trust, transparency, security is a key part of any software and ecosystem discussion. So making sure that cyber is part of the consideration and that you are managing your ecosystem in as safe and sensitive a way as you possibly can. It's never going to be zero. There's always going to be threats, but from an AI perspective, it's about thinking about things around how do you manage this within your ecosystem? How do you ensure that your data is encrypted at rest and in transit? That you're bringing the large language models towards the organisation, that your people aren't basically using the public-facing AI and releasing your IP and privacy information into public large language models. So there's plenty of things that organisations can be thinking about right now. Cyber is part of the ongoing technology conversation, and constantly evolving the cyber maturity of an organisation is critical. And it's not just the early stages of making sure we manage phishing attempts and these sorts of things.
Is AI governance limited to just writing a policy paper and then sharing it with everybody that people should not use this, should do this, and should not do that? Is AI governance, how do you see AI governance in action? How do you see AI governance in being embedded? How do you see AI governance being used on a day-on-day basis?
So AI governance is again, a huge topic of conversation right now. And so if you think about boards' requirement to trust and verify, getting that balance right and assisting organisations and the executive and the workforce around how do we drive the right behaviours, they do that through policy. And so getting an AI usage policy in place, I think the latest stats talk about at least 50% of organisations don't yet have an AI usage policy, which means that probably shadow AI is proliferating through the organisation. People are using it in a way that's probably not, wouldn't be considered best practice, and probably opens up risk for the organisation. So our approach is to look at governance and make sure it's fit for purpose for where the organisation is up to. And what you find is, if you start doing research in this space, AI governance is either checklist or what I would call Bible or phone book. Neither are really appropriate at this point for organisations. And so what we created was a governance framework that takes the best out of the NIST, risk management framework, the links to the Australian Voluntary Safety Standard, and basically considers how organisations consider the evidence requirements and operational readiness requirements that their AI is safe and responsible, that they can deploy it confidently. Ultimately, boards are thinking about two threshold questions. What are we doing with AI? Which is a value question. And secondly, is it safe? Is this going to have a reputational risk, a privacy risk, security risk? So how do we prove these things? And so our approach is, you need to educate and build the literacy of the workforce, but you need to think about both the opportunity and the risks. And so the policy framework sets the guardrails as a starting point. Then it's about basically building the muscle within the organisation that you need to be implementing AI, but in a way that looks at safety and value.
We talked about for organizations who don't want to use a public-facing large language model, and that's one. So the extreme end is using an OpenAI large language model on the cloud, and whatever you're sharing is for them to use and abuse. And then on the other side is you have your localized in-house language model installed and with big server rooms and all of that stuff. So that's the extreme end. I want you to elaborate the goods and the bads on both, and then the solution might be somewhere in between, and then we can talk to the solution in between. But let's start with the extremes.
If you're looking at, this is the age-old discussion on do I do on premises versus in the cloud. The latest thing is now people talking about AI and large language models, but the threshold of the question is, am I doing this myself on-prem with large data and storage capacity requirements and ongoing infrastructure costs up front, or do I use the cloud, your AWS, your Azure, these sorts of providers, which offer scalability, functionality, flexibility, lower cost as you build out your maturity. And so our view is the organisation needs to have a view on where they're up to in terms of their maturity and their cost profile and investment profile at the front end. On-prem, yes, it can help with security, with basically having a local, trusted, you can bring the open source model into your enterprise, but it is going to be more costly upfront versus a cloud-based solution, which is going to be more scalable. You're paying per token type mentality. It ramps as you scale and build your maturity. So it's really going to be somewhat dependent on the organisation, their use and their expected scaling is where I would start that conversation.
But in terms of the risk profiling point of view, what's the conversation to be had? Because if some organization may say you might start using the OpenAI tools, openly at the front line for the masses versus or use only our in-house AI tool.
Ultimately, I think most organisations are making that call now. Some will change their stature and say, no, we want to run these things, on-prem. But if you think about if the organisation is already shifted to the cloud, and not every organisation has, some smaller organisations haven't yet shifted, and there's still a huge runway in terms of shifting on-prem to cloud, regardless of AI, just in terms of their infrastructure and compute spend as an organisation. There are ways to think about that. It's not taking the large language model and your folks are just interfacing with the public large language model, jump on the internet, jump into OpenAI. It's an ecosystem. It's within your tenant. And so it is safe and secure within your ecosystem if you have an enterprise approach. Is a next level order of risk reduction or security enabled by being on-prem? Yes, arguably, but then there's always trade-offs with every decision. And so that's where, like I said, it comes down to cost, the fact that these models are improving 500% per annum. If you have a static model that you've invested in and built in your own enterprise, are you missing out on some of that uplift that comes from the 500% per annum in the new models constantly coming through? So it's an ongoing discussion, but it's also a discussion that most organisations, particularly larger organisations, have already made, whether they're dealing with their infrastructure on-prem versus being in the cloud. It's not unique to AI per se.
And are you using AI, and what kind of tools are you using within the whole AI spectrum?
So obviously we're using AI, and what we find is we'll work with organisations and use, what you want to do is have the ability to integrate and maximise the benefit of those. Most organisations in Australia, Microsoft organisations as a starting point, they're starting and they're getting comfort with Copilot, and then we're basically assisting in that space, and then we're building custom AI products in their Azure environment. Others that are deeper in the technology space and using AWS, they'll build on AWS and build custom AI. What you find is, again, our goal is not to change direction for organisations, it's to leverage investment decisions they've already made. And so if they're already building with AWS, they're likely going to, in AWS have partnerships with Anthropic, the model they're likely going to be using is AWS and Claude. If you're a Microsoft shop, you're going to generally be using Microsoft Azure, and their partnership is with OpenAI. And so our goal is to help organisations leverage technology, ecosystems and investments they've already made, but then build custom to solve their problems within the enterprise that they're already dealing with that then meet their customer needs.
And can you a bit more clarify? Microsoft Copilot is at the back end is a different tool, or is OpenAI, or is it Copilot is on its own?
Copilot and OpenAI. So Microsoft has an investment in OpenAI.
Okay.
Copilot runs out of OpenAI.
Okay. And what are the,
Out of the the OpenAI infrastructure. And
have you played around with localized language models? And what has your experience been? Which ones have you played with?
that's, I mean,
Or traveled with?
and probably not something I can personally offer. My technologists within the team would offer deeper insight. Certainly, the benefit of localized, like I said, and all of the models have their own benefits, opportunities, some risks. Each of those is almost what are we trying to do with it? And so whether it's localized or cloud, the models are, like I said, are improving exponentially. For the most part, from an enterprise perspective, you're really looking at OpenAI Enterprise, or if you're a Microsoft organization, you're using Copilot as your starting point in Azure.
The term being agentic and all of that has been overused, and now I think in every blog and every article people start using the word agentic AI. At some level, from a workforce point of view, people who are using AI on a regular basis, one of the key skills one needs to have is, for example, you have 20 plus years of experience, and then you need to know what you're prompting, first of all, and then you know what you are looking for as a product in the end. So when you prompt and when you receive a response, and it's good, bad, ugly. But as a younger workforce who might, and then for the last 20 years, me and you, we have gone through, somebody has trained us. There was a mentor, there was a senior leader who was helping us improve our skills, which means today we have come to a mindset that we know what good and bad looks like. And then hallucination might not work with us. But when somebody is very green in terms of experience, work experience or life experiences, if these AI agents are taking the roles of the front line of many sectors, to start with, in basic accountants, receptionists, and then which means what will happen is the workforce at the front end will not have the opportunity to learn the way we have learned. And then that agency within humans of understanding and experiencing how to prompt an AI or use a tool will be question mark. What do you see that trend?
I would say there's the headlines scream that 50% of frontline workforce and entry-level workers will disappear. The reality is completely different in terms of the research. And so if you look at in the last 6 months, PwC did a research report that looked at the last, I think it was 6 to 8 years, workforce that has exposure to AI, most exposed to AI, is growing at 40%. Workforce that is less exposed to AI, think of your care workers, your plumbers, trades, these sorts of roles, is growing at 65%. The key, both have average growth that is still very high. AI exposed or less AI exposed. And so I think there's a little bit of avoid the hype. The other thing I would say is most organisations, like we're deeply embedded in a number of organisations, we're not seeing people disappear. AI is outstanding, and it will continue to like I said, exponentially improve, but it is only good at tasks. It is not good at an entire job, and it is not good at an entire workflow. And so as we're going in and guiding organisations, it's 3 out of the 5 steps in this workflow are outstanding opportunities to take time and people out of this task. The 2 parts of this 5-step process still need the expert sitting over the top of it.
Yeah.
And so we're not seeing entire teams and people disappear as the first thing. So I would say, for the folks that are worried about, is every job going to be replaced, and particularly frontline? No, but those jobs should get better. Usually it's taking away the mundane elements of customer service roles, or in social services or health sector roles. The fact that someone will have a engagement with their client or care person, and they then need to go back to a desk, take that information, type it all up, then put it in a master system. An AI agent, voice-activated agent, can take that information, put it into the right fields, help you put it into the master system. It saves hours for the individual, so they're doing more of their core role, and in a care space, that's caring. That's direct engagement with another human, as opposed to doing I need to go back to the desk and do the administration sort of tasks. So we're certainly not seeing that whole sections of workforce are being reduced. And then the second thing I would say is most organisations have a risk appetite statement. They don't want to see autonomous agents running through their organisation end to end. Yes, there might be a cost reduction, but the risk spike in terms of their delivery could be catastrophic to their organisation. So it's about finding that balance and looking at tasks where AI assists, and like I said, engages and enables the individual to have a better role.
The future workforce have to be at some form AI ready. They need to, apart from all the skills, whether they are a lawyer or a doctor or whatever they are, they need to have AI skills on the side, which is like speaking English, like speaking skills, it's part of the core skills. What do you think is the right and appropriate age to introduce AI to a young person?
The way I would answer that is it's less about the young folks for AI literacy, and it's more about, there's a paradox that we talked about a second ago. It's more about the experienced folks that need AI literacy. What we find is right now, the folks that are in the workforce right now, they're the ones that need the upskilling. The next cohort that comes through is going to be AI native. And so there's 2 things here. What we will find as organisations and diverse, hire graduates, and ideally keep hiring graduates, is their AI literacy within the organisation will help. The older folks and the experienced folks within the organisation will benefit from having that AI cohort come through. But we both have kids. Our, from 5, 6-year-old daughter, she's probably using technology right now. As soon as they're able to use technology, they're already on iPads and phones and laptops at school. This is now about helping them to do it safely. And so just like we talk about within the organisation, you want to make sure if young students are using AI, that they understand the risks, they understand privacy, they understand how to prompt effectively and get the right sort of responses. But it's a tool to enable students in education. It's a tool to enable teachers to spend more time with students. So it's how do we help them to come up the curve? But then I'm less worried about the young folks coming through. They are AI native. They're growing up with AI. It's right now the challenge for Australia, and our productivity challenge more broadly as a nation, is how do we enhance and incentivise organisations to train the workforces they have today to get used to these, to do it safely, and to get benefit out of AI.
From an Australian context point of view, most of the AI tools are mostly Americans. And do we have our sovereign capabilities in Australia in terms of are there large language models being produced in Australia or created in Australia? One, and then second, as we know that they're power hungry data centers, how are we placed as a country to take on to that opportunity?
Existential sort of questions or threshold questions there. So yes, the latest and greatest large language models are being produced, out of the US and in the competition with China. So most of the large language models today are produced overseas from Australia. Could Australia produce a sovereign? Do we have the sovereign capability, and could we produce a large language model here? Arguably, Australia is a smart, prosperous country, so the answer should be yes. It would take an incredible investment, and so if these organisations, the hyperscalers, are spending trillions of dollars on building these models, there's a question of, do we take our latent capability and leverage the large language models and the investments that have already been made and play to where our competitive advantage actually lies, which is more around data, storage, energy. Mm-hmm. We have natural comparative advantages as a nation in that space, mm-hmm. versus do we need sovereign capability and do we build our own? Mm-hmm. That's a question that much smarter people than I are thinking about. But yes, we could, is the short answer. There's no impediment or constraint that says we couldn't. It becomes a financial, commercial, and, like you say, sovereign capability decision.
And in the next 5 to 10 years, most of the organization might be using some kind of AI tools in the system, and it'll be embedded. And what comes with AI is large power consumption. And the energy consumption as a country will increase from what we are at, because it's not just consumer power or commercial, but this is a different layer of industrialization of large data centers and running all the time, every time. Which means we have to scale more power production in the country. Do you see that as a bottleneck if we don't scale up to create more power plants, or that energy discussion to be had on the table?
100%. It's a challenge without even contemplating data centre consumption in Australia right now. We're still having a discussion on gas power usage, renewables. To me, it's the same discussion that needs to be had, but knowing there's an even bigger draw on power coming, being AI and infrastructure. But that should be seen as an advantage Australia has. Yeah. We can be a renewable energy superpower. We have significant uranium resources. We have significant LNG resources. Most countries don't have that advantage. We should be looking at all power sources to serve our energy requirements, and a part of that energy requirement will be AI and data.
Yeah, and then that's very critical from a point of view of that you might not be AI sovereign, but you still need to be competitive in the global technology landscape, and you have to be able to deliver that technology capabilities for people who are here. So that's a bigger chunk of growth in energy consumption will come from the consumption of data centers and AI and all technology. How have you observed in terms of various sectors, which sectors are across legal, medical, healthcare, mining, industrial?
Yes.
Which sectors are taking the lead in terms of AI innovation?
I would say it's less about sector and more about leadership. And so AI can have advantage to any and all sectors. Mm-hmm. If those organisations are clear on what they're trying to achieve, and so if their strategy and their objectives are clear, AI can help underpin execution of strategy 10 times out of 10, mm-hmm. every sector. And so we have clients in manufacturing, in healthcare, in oil and gas, energy resources, in early education. This is a unique technology that can assist organisations, and so that's why I say it's more about the leadership and then segmenting their highest value use cases to start. Most of the time what we find is organisations that are not leaning into this, they're hesitating. In a recent, the National AI Centre came out with their latest adoption figures, and it was, when you dig into the data, not the headlines, 73% of organisations, small, medium enterprise organisations, are still hesitating. They haven't yet identified, they're not yet implementing, they haven't even contemplated if they're going to use AI. So this is more about helping organisations understand the technology is mature enough to use at an enterprise level to help them achieve their objectives, and it can help every sector.
And the majority of the workforce probably is employed in this SME space, and then they are holding a hiccup with the two, because the larger providers probably have enough buck in the bank to push large change. What's the sweet spot for them in terms of, yes, they have to discuss about the why they should be doing it. But what's the sweet spot going? How far do they, in terms of maturity and understanding? Because they might not be a tech person. They're running a chain of cafes, probably.
And you don't need to be a tech person. You need to be someone that's commercially minded to think about, well, what is it if I'm running a cafe? Am I trying, we talk, the first question when we're talking with senior leaders is, are you thinking about this as a revenue generation opportunity, or is this a cost optimization opportunity? Everyone can think about that for their own business. If it's a cafe, if it's a mining company, if it's a manufacturing, because that starts to focus the intent on what are we trying to achieve. Then it's about where can the technology assist. And so whether that's something that's predictive or whether it's something that's generative, there are numerous opportunities and use cases already in play in every sector that you can go, well, why couldn't that be us? How do we break that down small enough? Where do we get the right partners to assist us? So it's not a multi-year transformation. This is something that's small and able to be delivered within a series of weeks or months to start that journey.
I might see that the old problem of legacy tech and then the large tech. So, for example, as a small business, you might buy multiple agents to do stuff.
Yes.
So there can be agent doing the reception work. There can be agent doing the so one could buy multiple agents for multiple organizations because that's the front end of an AI product in the back. But and then the challenge will be how to bring them together, integrate all of that together as well. So how do you see, is that problem coming up in the work which you've been observing?
Yes and no, in the sense of, again, legacy systems and infrastructure and investments organisations have already made. Our goal is to figure out how do you integrate within their environment. And so if they've made those decisions, ultimately you then want to build scalable products and agents in that same environment. As soon as you've built one, and this is why we anticipate this is, and our offering is more about custom building. You're not buying things off the shelf and shoving them into your business and then having to buy another element. You've built something, it's scalable, it's already within your ecosystem. The next one is much easier, the next one is much easier, and they all integrate. They're all dealing with your infrastructure, your CRM, your systems. An agent is effectively just going out to those legacy systems, getting the information and moving it across. If you think about a workflow being horizontal, most infrastructure or platform investments are vertical. And so what we're doing is helping organisations manage their own workflows end to end.
In the most recent economic reform roundtable run by the Treasurer, Dr. Jim Chalmers, they brought people from across sectors. There were unions, there were tech experts as well. it's one thing which came out as well beyond AI was 4-day work week and productivity. So how do you, that conversation of, getting more time and more value out of what you're doing. So how can the productivity and AI conversation can we had that together with 4-day work week? So how do you see those things going together?
I saw an economist say we can't spend the benefits before we've created them, is the way I would look at that. So 4-day work week on its own as a discussion that the country was having probably a year ago is a different proposition.
Yeah.
Linking 4-day work week to AI benefits is too early. We haven't yet built the productivity enhancement within the organisation to automatically say to organisations, you now need to have a workforce that's going to be there 20% less. I think is not the way to approach it. It's more about, because that's identifying the prize before the outcome. And so what we would work at is, let's identify the outcome we're seeking, co-create that with the workforce. Again, if you engage and enable the workforce, they're going to pull this towards them. They want this. It's going to be a better job for them. If there's benefit that we can have a shared pie between the workforce, between organisations and between the ATA ultimately, that's how we should be looking at this. We want to grow the pie from an Australian perspective. Productivity is a piece of this puzzle, but we can't spend the benefit before we've created them. So let's look at creating them and have management and workforce working together to actually identify and then deliver on those.
How would you safely introduce AI to your boys?
Already doing it.
Are you doing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is about, again, and it's the same way you think about how do you do this in an enterprise versus a personal context. You find ways to introduce it where it's already interesting and impactful for those people.
Okay.
For an organisation, it's about your day job. If you take these 3 things and AI can help you to do that, of course someone's going to lean into that because it's better. If it's a natural interest point for your children, whether that's their homework, whether that's my kids are obsessed with soccer, we'll ask a question and then it almost becomes a bit of a research report. We'll go for drive, when we're driving, we'll ask, the voice activated, whichever model we're talking with. There's plenty of questions that, we were talking before when you're in the car and your kids ask a question. How do you, instead of you needing to answer it, being able to ask and answer a question and having the AI assist in that, exponentially opens up their minds. And instead of it being a 2-sentence answer that Dad gave as the answer, it actually talks to, and again, as long as you know that what the model is providing, you're sense checking and going, that is factual. You look for opportunities based on their interests and passion as a way of introducing it and do it in a safe way. So you're working with them.
My concluding question, how might we catch on to this opportunity AI is and use the capabilities of AI as an organization, as a country, to maximize the benefits?
It's similar to where we started. Think big, start small, scale fast. Each and every individual and organisation, that's going to mean something different. But the size of the opportunity needs to be material, that it can be beneficial. The start small, put the governance guardrails in place, how, individually or organisationally or country from a regulatory perspective, and then scale fast. Start the journey. Deliver value early and often. We can't wait. There's just too much at stake here. Individuals and organisations need to start, do it safely, focus on value and what that means to them.
Lovely. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for your time.